Professor Hanchett talked about marketing and communications. Today we're going to be talking about stakeholders, public relations, and marketing campaigns. To piggyback off of the broader topic of marketing and communications. And I was inspired by Professor Hanchett's idea that he showed up. And so I thought I'd pull out my personal brand. So like he said, once that picture's taken, it's there for eternity. And this is me, my freshman year at Berkeley. IDs have changed a little bit. But yeah, that was my coming in as a freshman. And you hear of Berkeley being this liberal, radical place. And you always wonder, does it have an effect on the students? And shortly after I graduated, here's what I turned into. And, it did. It had a very transformative effect on me. And so actually my Facebook profile picture was this picture for a number of years, just because it was a fun one. But then when I went on the job market to get a faculty position, I thought, well, if a potential employer stalks me on Facebook to find out who is this applicant, I didn't think that they'd want to have see that be their first image or impression of me. And so I took it down. It's still on my Twitter account. My Twitter account isn't very active. But anyways, it is kind of interesting. Your IDs are one way to express yourself and have fun with your personal brand and what you want your identity to be. So stakeholders. This is going to be one section for your nonprofits startup. We touched on this at the beginning of the semester, but I want to sort of dig more deeply into it because you're going to be writing about it and thinking about it in the context of your organization. And even, especially as you talk about marketing, what Professor Hanchett talked about was who is your audience? And with nonprofits and with any organization, you have multiple audiences that you're trying to market to and that you're trying to appeal to. And that's basically stakeholders, people who have a stake in the success or failure of your organization. And so it's good to know, okay, who are the people out there? Who are the audiences? It isn't just one audience that you're trying to appeal to, but it's multiple audiences. And sometimes they have competing values or competing priorities that make it difficult to actually know how to sort of message your things that you're promoting. I think of SPIA, they have multiple audiences. They have faculty, and what appeals to a faculty member might not necessarily appeal to a student, a potential student. It might not appeal to parents of students. It might not appeal to high-income donors. And so those are all key players in SPIA being successful, but they have different things that they're interested in, different priorities or things that would appeal to them. So when we think about stakeholders for your organizations, and we've touched on this before, but when you think about your organization that you're starting up, who are some of the key stakeholders and why do you see them as important stakeholders for your organization? Yeah, Brandon.
Customers, the people that come.
So, and say your organization again?
Good Bar.
The Good Bar, okay.
Yeah, so working with potential...
The clients.
Yeah, the people who are like
Get a job.
yeah.
Yes, okay, so clients is probably a respectful way to, not the unemployed people. Okay, so the potential clients and finding them even and letting them know about your organization. Other stakeholders, just as you think about we really need to engage this population. Yeah.
Wherever the community of your organization is located. So,
okay, so you're expanding the brand.
Yeah, so ours would be just local Bloomington community.
Okay.
Because not only are we just reaching out to or targeting clients, but it's an arts organization representative in Bloomington. So
well, and so really for you guys, you would need to engage the indie music industry, that whole community, which isn't just in Bloomington, but it's around the world ultimately. But it's a community that self-identifies, or that, almost where does that community congregate, or where are the spaces online, or even, concert or venues fairs where they bring in a lot of independent music artists and stuff. So not only local, but then thinking broadly. Other stakeholders that you can think of when you think about your organization. Yeah.
I was thinking maybe possible collaborators.
Yeah. So who would be possible collaborators?
I know we talked about collaborating with the music school.
Okay. Yeah.
That would be essential for our organization.
Sure. So again, the Jacob School has an interest in the success of Expand the Brand. Mm-hmm. And also potentially their students. utilizing the resources of Expand the Brand and just sort of promoting music in general at IU and in Bloomington. So again, it's a stakeholder. Now, Jacob School might not even have no idea that Expand the Brand exists, and who are the key players within Jacob School that, are the gatekeepers that would allow you to get your word out. Yeah, allow you to expand your brand. Yeah, you guys need to do branding for your own brand. That's good. Eric.
I was gonna say, just like the donors, like give money to our organization.
Okay, yeah. And so in your organization, are you Good Bar? No.
No, we're the schools in Nicaragua.
Okay. So yeah, the potential donors, like donors in the US, donors in Nicaragua, or like...
Well, whoever pretty much like gives money to further our organization. Like we would want to keep them up to date on like how many kids graduated that year, like stuff like that. Because
Sure.
I know, like with some of the organizations I used to like just volunteer for, they have like updated email like each year.
Sure.
That's a good strategy to like keep them up to date.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about donors, the way that foundations typically work, they have focuses where, they deal explicitly with health-related issues, or they deal explicitly with employment, underemployment, or some of them do education. And so it's like, okay, who are the key foundations out there that fund international education initiatives? And that's what they do. And so you target them and actually then getting to know the people, the program officers of those foundations, and basically court them, say, hey, here's what we're doing, keeping them up to date on your activities with the idea that hopefully one day that they would invest in Bluefields Academy. So the donors are a key stakeholder, that they're not the recipients of your services, but in order to have your services happen, if you don't have them, Bluefield Academy won't happen. Any other stakeholders in this whole realm that we haven't covered, types of stakeholders that would be good to consider? Any of you where it'd be important where the government, whether it be the local government, state government, would potentially influence the success of your organization? Like if you don't have their support or endorsement, your organization wouldn't function, or it'd struggle to. Which ones are in schools? Are any in schools, like public schools?
Ours is the music program.
Okay, so the PRIA. So what public officials or government officials would be stakeholders for PRIA? And teachers and principals and superintendents are public officials.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess it would be like the principals of the schools that we would want to, because ours would be an after school program, so we would need their permission to come in. So I guess the schools that we wanted to be affiliated with.
Sure. Yeah. So again, when I say government, it's like, public schools are part of the government employees, they're state employees. And so thinking through, there's many more stakeholders than we would realize, and even for your assignment, it's part of identifying all those potential stakeholders. We sort of covered this, why might they be interested in the organization's success? The basic thing is that they all have different interests. So the Jacob School doesn't need Expand the Brand. Their brand has been expanded well, but they want to see Expand the Brand be successful because they want to make sure that their students' music and artistic talent is being promoted, and that there's opportunities for each of their students to do it. You guys aren't the only player in town, you don't need to be the only player in town, but having you in the mix is beneficial. Same with things like PRIA, the music education. It's oh wow, if there's a group out here, a nonprofit that wants to supplement the activities that we're doing or where we're falling short, that will be beneficial to us. And so again, there's helping even these stakeholders to see the value added that you bring to this sphere, to this arena, is important to sort of appeal to the stakeholders. Same with donors. We have this idea that they give money, but they're very interested in making sure that they invest their money well. They're not just sort of sitting there saying, well, let's give money and let's see who the lucky person is today. They have very serious metrics of trying to vet the organizations to make sure the money that they give actually accomplishes the mission of the foundation. So the idea is if you can convince them hey, actually we're a legitimate organization, we have a track record of doing high quality service, and so when you invest the money, there's a very high chance that we're actually going to do what we promise to do in our organization. So again, helping each of the different stakeholders have different interests and convincing them the value that your organization adds or how you will help them accomplish their mission. So for the section of the stakeholders, basically you need to describe 5 different stakeholders and explain why they would be interested in your organization's success. So it isn't like naming 5 foundations, and say, okay, there we have it. It's more like thinking about funders, government, clients, maybe volunteers. There's probably others that I can't think of right now, but basically you need to identify 5 relevant stakeholders. Yeah.
Would like interns be a stakeholder or like students interested in interning for your?
Yeah. So you could say we need interns, volunteers, employees, because that's all basically people who are going to be service providers. So you just need to pick one of those. But you could say interns would be a stakeholder. Basically, I don't want you to overlap, and just sort of cheat and say, well, here's 5 different ways to say volunteer. But really, I want to force you to think, who are all the players? So for you, it could be Jacob School would be one stakeholder, and then musicians would be another. So yeah, we didn't really talk, I guess we did with Good Bar, but one key stakeholder that is more obvious is the recipients of your service. They're clearly a stakeholder. But if you're working with kids, then it would be the parents of the recipients is another stakeholder that sometimes gets overlooked. So, this section is marketing and communications, but really a part of it, and the book doesn't mention it very much, but public relations is a huge part of marketing and communications for an organization. Public relations is sort of the public perception of your organization. And in marketing and communication, frames or sort of designs what your public reputation is. But public relations is sort of this ongoing interaction with the public. It's how your organization is relating to the broader public, how it's relating to all these different stakeholders, and it's the interaction between your organization and the public. And so it's all nested within marketing and communications. Some of you asked, well, what's the difference between marketing and communications? And now I'm adding another term, public relations. It's all this is related to, what's the public perception of your organization? How well is it known? If you have if people don't even know about your organization, that's not a very good thing. If they have a poor impression of your organization, that's something that you need to change. And to clarify, marketing, for most part, is actively spending dollars. Think about advertising is sort of what marketing is. Communication is, in a sense, free advertising. In the sense that if you send out newsletters or press releases or statements, you're not sort of paying to put that in an online ad or put it on a school bus, but it's just you're communicating, you're sort of having a steady flow. Twitter is a form of communication. It's marketing and it's public relations, but it's cost effective. It's stuff that you're already doing that you're just getting the word out. Marketing is basically when SPIA says, okay, we want to put billboards up, we want to pay money to people to get our name out there. And public relations occurs with both of these things. It occurs with marketing and it occurs with communications. Some of the things that I think about with public relations is this idea of humble self-promotion. So can you think of examples where someone is really good and they know they're really good, and by the fact that they act like they're really good, your impression of them kind of diminishes? Can you think of examples broadly? It could be individuals, it could be organizations where you're okay, I know you're good, but when you present yourself in that way, it just kind of reduces the quality of the good. Yeah.
Kanye West.
Okay, in what ways?
He's pretty much an asshole in the media's perception.
Uh-huh.
But his quality of art is pretty good.
Yeah. So the product is actually really good, but his sort of self-promotion diminishes the public perception of his work. Yeah,
I
Brandon.
think a lot of the times when you're looking at celebrities in such different fields and stuff, they off camera or off script, they're a total different person than they are on camera and when people see them, because that's the image they're going with. Really, behind the scenes, they want to make a great product, they have to be an asshole or someone else through there, or they're not uneducated in a way to be able to present themselves in a positive manner.
Sure.
and then some news releases and media coverage do pull that out.
Picks up on it, yeah.
But sometimes they have all these people that they pay to push that down.
Sure, yeah. Well, and I mean, one example is like Steve Jobs running Apple. Amazing organization, but over time it comes out like he was a really hard person to work with, and his family life was struggling. And so there is, you know, sort of the private life of the person might not reflect the public life, but then also you have people that bolster this public perception of you. And so that's, in some ways, marketing. Can you think of examples of people or organizations where they do high quality stuff, excellent stuff, but their self-promotion is in a more humble posture, or one that's like, it actually elevates, you actually become even more impressed with them because not only are they doing high quality work, but they're not all about themselves. Does that make sense? Like, can you think of people where it's like, your impression of them increases because of the way that they do self-promotion? Yeah.
That just kind of, it reminds me of when we had that conversation about high performing people.
Mm-hmm.
The people that work really hard and they get rewarded for what they do, but they don't brag about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they stay busy, but they don't brag about
Sure.
how busy they are.
Yeah.
And they get a lot accomplished.
Yeah, no, that's a very good criteria. This idea of bragging about it, like, so it's interesting with SPIA becoming, getting the #1 ranking. When we go out into these events where there's other schools and stuff, actually, it's interesting. SPIA advertises it, I think, a little too much. And it's sort of like if you were Harvard and you said, kept going around saying, we're the #1, we're the #1. Well, people know that Harvard's good. You don't need to remind people. And at some of these public events, like SPIA will remind people, like, hey, we're #1. Now, everyone, in this little world, everyone knows that SPIA got #1 ranking. So it's better, in my impression, to not say anything. Just to be a humble servant in this field, or to continue to do high quality work versus reminding people. I guess when you feel like you need to remind people, that is somewhat of an indication of insecurity. Like, did you forget that, or like, aren't we great? Like, clap for me. We're it's like, you actually don't need to do that. And when you do that, that diminishes the quality of your accomplishments, or the public perception of it. It's sort of like, oh, yeah, it's them. It's that guy from Harvard, or, impressions like that. Can you think of organizations, nonprofits in particular, which just are doing high quality stuff, and yet they're not sort of self-aggrandizing in some ways? Any nonprofit organizations where you're like, wow, that's just a top-notch quality organization. Like, they're doing good stuff, but they're not like all about themselves or self-promotion.
I think in Bloomington, the Lotus Festival is kind of like that. Because you don't really hear much about them from themselves, but they really rely on word of mouth. And I think that's really interesting because they don't promote themselves as much, at least you don't hear it.
Sure.
Then when people use it in studies and they talk about it as one of Bloomington's best attractions.
Sure. Yeah. So again, in many ways, it's doing high quality stuff and not spending much time on self-promoting. Because whenever anyone comes up to you in an organization, tries to convince you that they're great, you're automatically suspicious. Like, you're just kind of like, why are you working so hard to, convince me that you're more than you are? Versus people discovering you and saying, wow, this is pretty impressive. Brandon.
Being so involved in Dance Marathon, Riley Hospital for Children,
Yeah.
I think they do a fantastic job. But they're not the ones who are promoting themselves as much, but
Sure.
the organizations that come and support them and donate all the money to Riley Hospital,
Sure.
that are the ones that are doing their promotion,
Yep.
and the ones that are bragging of how great they are.
Uh-huh.
But there's so many new doctors from all over the world and the country that come because of the research that's done in the hospital up in Indianapolis.
Yeah. So this is perfect. You segue into my next thing. Let others promote your organization. So, do any of you have friends who are just really good promoters of others? Like, when you do an accomplishment, or Bryson?
Yeah, I got a real good friend. His name is Anthony, and he, my goodness, he's the type of person who will just promote you like you cannot forget it. If he's promoting something, which we're in this organization together, it's called Release the Cure. And when we first created it, he would go around and he would literally just hound you to come out to the call out meetings and everything. And it's actually a good thing because we had a great turnout. And the majority of the people that showed up was from the people that he talked to, but he's the type of person who just does not take no for an answer. You could say, I'm thinking about it, you don't need to do that, he would just hound you forever, so.
And you like it. I mean, it feels good.
Oh yeah, it's a good, I feel like it's a really good trait to have. I mean, it could be a bit annoying sometimes, but I mean, when you're looking to get the job done, he gets the job done.
Sure. Well, and I think about it in the context, like, let's say you're on the job market, you're looking for jobs, and you landed 3 really good interviews. Now, if you go around saying, hey, I got 3 interviews, like, it feels like bragging, or it's like, okay, that's cool, I guess. But if your friend says, hey, did you hear that Brandon got 3 interviews? I mean, that's pretty awesome. Like, that's really cool. All three of them in DC or in New York or in Chicago or something like that. Like, because in a sense that's a good accomplishment and you want to promote that or want that to be known, like, hey, you're a highly sought after job candidate. But if you self-disclose it, it comes off wrong. Whereas if others are promoting you and advocating for you, then your quality of your work gets out. But it's not like, look at me, clap for me, aren't I great? It's more others are pointing to you. And that, in a sense, adds credibility to the accomplishment. So if you're always saying, look at how great I am, it doesn't count for much. But if other organizations are coming in and saying, singing your praises of what you've accomplished, then that actually bolsters your credibility. And I say this in the context of, right now it's let others promote your organization, but really, I think the key is being a promoter of other organizations for yourself. And so think about this, we know how it feels when people are promoting us, it feels good. And so if you turn the table, and if your organization or you as an individual are actively promoting other organizations, that will serve you well, because that creates a culture of promoting organizations. So a lot of times I'll meet with people up at IUPUI, and so IUPUI has this sort of little sibling syndrome compared to IU. And for me, and this is in all honesty and genuineness, whenever I meet someone from IUPUI, I say IUPUI is the university of the future. In the sense that it's in an urban location, it's very cosmopolitan, much more diverse than IU Bloomington. And I talk about all the innovative things that IUPUI is doing and promoting that institution. And what you sense is from people it bolsters their esteem and their view of the university and thinking about, how they feel about being a part of that organization. And that would be true of other, other competitors in the field, is what are you doing as an organization to promote them? And so it's not sort of like this game of like, well, if I can push you down, then that'll elevate me. Instead, it's, am I about promoting others? Because if you're promoting others, chances are they'll come around and promote your work too, because they see you as an advocate. Just like your friend who's promoting the stuff that you're doing, if that person does something, you're naturally gonna be inclined to pay back, that promotion. So this idea, these are all sort of soft skills of humble self-promotion and then promoting others, or sort of allowing others to promote your stuff. And related to that is cultivating positive associations. And this is an asset that nonprofits can have that they underutilize or underrealize. That a lot of times people will want to be associated with your nonprofit because of the positive associations that come with it. So think about, what are some nonprofits that you could potentially volunteer to work with, whereas if you put that on your resume, that actually is an asset because of the positive associations of that nonprofit. Can you think of different things, nonprofits that you could be affiliated or work with that would have positive associations? Yeah.
Well, I know the Boys and Girls Club, they partner with AmeriCorps and have AmeriCorps staff members, because that way they get more funding, and then it also looks really good.
Sure. Yeah, so being a part of AmeriCorps or even Boys and Girls Club, there's positive associations with that. Like that actually, if an employer is looking at your resume and they see your involvement, with AmeriCorps or Boys and Girls Club, that will bolster the impression of you. Like, oh, okay, wow, this is that's a more well-rounded person. There's positive associations. Any other organizations that come to mind that you can see? Yeah.
Maybe like Habitat for Humanity.
Okay. Yeah.
Just because they have like one of the most recognizable brands, I think, of nonprofit wise in America. But I mean, like really any recognizable brand would be good because I mean, the employer kind of is already like familiar with maybe their mission, like maybe what you've done there.
Yeah. So you say any recognizable brand. What if it is
That's positive.
That's positive. Okay. Because I had a friend. He's actually at SPIA who was deciding whether or not to go work for the Clinton Foundation. So he's philanthropy foundation type worker, and he wants to go into that field. And he's like, "What's the public perception of the Clinton Foundation?" Now it's an amazing foundation. It's doing great things, but it's also very partisan, and there's associations with it where it's like, do I want that? Do I want that to be my internship and my experience? And so,
And that one's tricky because like in that case, I mean, half the population might look at it like, oh, that's cool.
Sure, yeah.
Like, wow, you're a crook or something.
Yeah, like it could evoke very different reactions. Whereas like Habitat for Humanity is a great example where who's against Habitat for Humanity? I mean, it's very low animosity towards Habitat for Humanity. And you even think of the founder and president, Jimmy Carter, he's an example of this humble self-promotion. Like you think of he was the president of the United States and he could be doing whatever he wants. And he's one of the leaders of one of the biggest international nonprofits, but it's in a very humble way, and basically other people are promoting Habitat. All the people who volunteer are just saying, hey, this is a great organization. So the positive associations, and that's, as your organization grows, that's actually an asset that you can leverage, that like by having people involved with your organization, it'll bolster their reputation. And then also, what are the other organizations that you want to be associated with or affiliated with? But then, as we saw with like Clinton Foundation, there's some where you're like, oh, we might not want to become affiliated with this type of organization. Like, can you think of examples where the association might be negative in terms of public relations, where you're potentially collaborating and NRA, okay. In what ways? Like, how would you see, so NRA wants to fund, what's your organization again? Food Life. NRA wants to be a major donor to Food Life.
That'd be tricky because I know there's a high crime rate in Detroit. So that could look bad to a lot of community members or some of our religious leaders or some of those who are affected by the crime.
Yeah. So there's, you have to be selective in who you partner with or collaborate with. I think wasn't one of the nonprofits in the news, the pharmaceutical company that was going to donate. You guys remember?
Right?
Yeah.
Donated
Yeah.
1 million prescriptions.
Yeah, it was like, okay, they turned down the donation because of sort of what the associations with that might be, or it'd be like endorsing, or what was it, just in the news, Coca-Cola underwrites a lot of children hospitals. Like they're a sponsor of these children hospitals, and so there's these propositions to tax sodas and Coke and stuff like that. And it's by these doctors who are saying, yeah, we need to tax sugary beverages or whatever. And yet then Coca-Cola's in there supporting the children's hospital, like giving them millions and millions of dollars. And so there's these conflicts. Even in SPIA, I think I mentioned this, where one of the faculty members got a research grant from the Koch brothers Foundation. And so the Koch brothers are known to be climate change deniers. So that's part of their platform, is that they don't believe in climate change. And so how can the School of Public and Environmental Affairs, which is addressing issues related to climate change, what does that do when we take money from an organization that is, basically saying that climate change isn't happening? It's a big farce. And so there's associations where it can actually, just by being associated with them, can damage your brand or your identity. So there's positive associations, but also negative associations that can pull you down. And then, another part of this public relations, and this is all just sort of this ongoing management of how are you being perceived by the broader public, so it's who are you associated with, what type of public perception that people have. And I would say a big thing is capitalizing on big wins. So if you think of, it's basically when there's big accomplishments or things like efforts where you've done a lot of good, the tendency a lot of times the organization is to just move on to the next thing. It's like because you're just so focused on, moving forward that you forget about sort of capitalizing like, hey, this was a big accomplishment. We need to let our people know. And so can you think of examples at IU which have been big wins for the university or things within the university that it's like, that makes us look good? Like, oftentimes we have negative stuff. So yeah.
I think the biggest and easiest to look at is our sports.
Okay, yeah.
So especially with the Olympics.
Yes.
Especially the swimmers and divers did so well.
Yeah.
And having so many other athletes there. I mean, we would be the 11th country in Indiana University in the medal race.
Yeah.
And having the basketball team do so well, and the football team making it to a bowl game,
sure,
and so on.
Yeah.
Other sports that have done really, really well for you.
Yeah, especially the Olympic sports, meaning non-football or basketball. Like there are some big accomplishments that could go unnoticed. Like unless people are like featuring and spotlighting these athletes, especially the ones who are going to the Olympics, and capitalizing on that of just shining a light on this aspect of IU. Because a lot of times, if you think about it, not just IU, but any organization, when it makes the news, it's often for something bad. I mean, that's what sells, is it bleeds, and so like, let's get on there, and the fraternity just did something, or there was crime, or there was, and so the default is the negative stuff makes the headlines. And so this is, what are some of the good things that IU is doing or that's going on? Can you think of another one? Yeah.
Something that IU capitalizes on, I think, are its very established alumni. Like everyone always talks about Mark Cuban, or just like people who get like honorary degrees from IU that are famous or that people really hone in on. I think that's something that they do really well.
Yeah. Well, and even if you walk through the halls of SFIA, the TV screens oftentimes will spotlight what a student is doing. Like a student that went on, a spring break trip down to Nicaragua or Guatemala, or different activities, or like the DC program. And it's just sort of so that the pictures or the images in your mind are ones of the good that IU is doing, or that SFIA is doing. And so it's all these things where it's like, rather than just sort of moving on, it's capitalizing on those and sort of highlighting them and promoting them, not in like a over the top way, but just making sure there's a steady stream of positive messaging of your organization that's going out and highlighting those things. Because the tendency, again, is to not, and the reason why I say capitalize on them, it's because they already happen. You don't have to fabricate them. Like, they happen, and so you just need to then spotlight them and make the most of them for your organization. And so again, these are all like, think about the news and the media and public perceptions. And so there's a difference between writing the story versus reacting to the story. And so a good example I can think of is, so on campus, there's tons of construction, and people don't like construction. And there's pathways that you're used to taking, and all of a sudden they get blocked, or traffic is backed up, and so there's just construction. What was interesting with IU recently, they've written the story by, you see these banners, like fencing things, where it says philanthropy at work. Have you noticed those? So IU went ahead of the game, and instead of reacting to all of these negative things about, construction, they framed it in the context of philanthropy at work. And when you look at that, you're like, it just changes your impression of construction. I mean, it really does. And maybe it doesn't for you, but it does for me, where I'm like, one, it's like, IU's getting money, IU's growing, this is good. Like, it's a positive, like, this is growth. Versus just having a chain link fence and being blocked from going to where you want to go, and then people ranting of saying, why is all this construction going on? Why can't they do it in the summertime or whatever? And so what I find interesting is, if you can write the story and sort of frame what people's perception of it is, then you have better control over the public relations or public perceptions. Whereas the tendency is to try and lay low until someone sort of says something, and like you're kind of scrambling to deal with it. So like with the Koch brothers, this is maybe a bad example. The Koch brothers made this contribution. It was known to the SPIA administration, but it was just gonna kind of lay low. And then all of a sudden, some alumni, SPIA alumni, found out about it, and they're like, I heard that there's this donation. What's that? And so they started a Facebook group and started basically a protest group of SPIA saying, the value of our degree has been diminished because you're taking money from climate change deniers. And so all of a sudden there's this momentum against SPIA, and this was hurting SPIA's reputation. And so what SPIA and what Professor Hanchett had to deal with, he said like 50% of his job is putting out fires, and this was like a major fire because he's like, we're like scrambling to respond to this to sort of rein control back into the story of this, because yes, the Koch brothers did contribute, but also relative to the amount of money that comes into SPIA, it was a very small amount, and yet it was being presented as like 50% of the funding that comes to SPIA is from groups that we wouldn't want to be associated with. And so if you're spending all of your time reacting to stories, then you're spending a lot of energy and resources just to get back to neutral. Whereas this idea of writing the story is a way of anticipating, okay, what are going to be some challenges or obstacles that come up for our organization? And then so related to that is responding to negative press. Can you guys think of examples where people have responded poorly to negative press happens. We make mistakes. Everyone's going to make a mistake. Organizations are going to make mistakes. People are going to make mistakes. So you can't have a strategy of, I'm not going to make a mistake. Like, you have to recognize, okay, I am going to make mistakes. Our organization is. Can you think of examples where it's been done poorly?
Recently, Tim Burton was called out for not having enough colored people in his films. And so he came out and pretty much was like, oh, well, I never said anything negative against black exploitation films. But then everyone was like, oh, well, but those were intended for a certain audience, especially back then when you had such a dominant white movie companies were dominantly white, and so people expected him to apologize in a different way. That would look negatively as far as people going to see his movie who don't agree with him. So just the way, they're looking for a response, and so and it's very hard to give a good apology, you have to be genuine. I mean, if you're trying to skirt the issue, it doesn't work. Can any of you think of examples where it actually was done very well? Like, and I'll give another negative example that relates to the nonprofits, is when Lance Armstrong was caught for doping. If you remember back the saga, and so here he is. I mean, this is a multi-million-dollar foundation, the Livestrong Foundation. So it wasn't just about Lance, but his entire organization was sinking, and the way that he handled it was so poorly. Like, it's just this vehement denial until he could no longer deny it, and then it was finally like, okay, yeah, but everyone does it. And everything kind of crumbled. Can any of you think of examples where it actually was done in a high quality way?
Michael Phelps, I would say, I don't think he ever really had to verbally address the media, but the whole thing about marijuana. And then he comes to the Olympics and does his thing again. So I guess that's a way to reverse that negative press on him.
Is to perform well again. Possibly, yeah. I mean, yeah.
I think Burger King uses their social media in a way that responds to negative press. I remember there was a point in time I was scrolling on Burger King's site, or I remember people used to post on their wall about burger that they had that was terrible or anything, and they would respond immediately by saying, we're sorry for the incident or whatever had happened. Email us right away so we can, have some type of compensation or something like that. So I feel like that was a great way to attack negative press and to kind of just compensate the needs of everybody else.
Yeah, and respond directly.
This is similar to that, and I'm still unsure if it actually was Campbell's that responded to this or just someone who goes by Campbell's Soup. Someone had written on Facebook about how the Campbell's Soup commercial that portrayed a gay couple was bad, and it disgusted them or something, and then Campbell's responded and said we're sorry that you feel that way, maybe you should try a can of our Campbell's chicken noodle soup to warm your cold dead heart. And it was just so perfect that But if it was Campbell's, like, good job. And that I think was like, it wasn't like sorry, but it was like standing up, like in a different way. It was like standing up for what they believe in.
Sure. Yeah.
Which I think is like, you don't have to be sorry if you get like negative press, if it's what you believe.
Sure. Yeah.
And that can be negative too, like if you stand up for your negative like beliefs. But I don't think that like you always need to say you're sorry.
You don't need to cave to. You don't need to compromise your position, and so that's a good example. Yeah.
One of my favorite ones, I had to look it up because I want to know exactly what it said. It was when the Red Cross social media specialist tweeted, they thought they were tweeting in their personal account, and they were actually tweeting to their like 300,000 followers for the Red Cross, and they said, Ryan found 2 more 4-bottle packs of Dogfish Head's Midas Touch beer. When we drink, we do it right. # getting slizzard. So, an hour later, they deleted the tweet, and the Red Cross tweeted out and said, we've deleted the rogue tweet, but rest assured the Red Cross is sober, and we've confiscated the keys. And so that was put into a positive light.
Sure. Yeah. So, and I think a part of it, like the examples that I've seen where it's done well is when the people just own it 100%. And it really, all it takes in many ways is personal ownership of the action and saying you're sorry. Because in a sense, the public knows that people make mistakes. Like, and that is just a mistake.
Yeah, and they tweeted actually, again, I forget what it was, but they said something about we do great things, but don't forget, like, we're all human here.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like, the strategy isn't to avoid negative situations or negative press, because you are going to do things where you mess up. It's more, what are effective ways to own it and then move forward with the organization. In terms of capitalizing on big wins, I recently got this email in my inbox. I clicked on it. It was from IU Foundation, and I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I click on it, and we're going to watch it. It's a video that they put together. It's like a thank you video, and it stood out to me because it was like a way for IU to capitalize on its big wins and also thank people and also promote IU as a university. And so we're going to watch this thing that they sent out. As you watch that, what impressions does it evoke for you? Like, just as you think about it, seeing that, what does it make you think about, or what reactions do you have?
Sincerity.
Sincerity? Okay, yeah. In what ways, like, or why did it speak sincerity to you?
Everything just seemed really genuine and heartfelt. The way that the words, it's kind of like a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And how the pictures kind of resemble what was being said, not just from the pictures, you know.
Yeah. Well, and even like the part of where I talk about self-promotion, or like when it said there's a lot of different causes that you can give to, it's affirming that, yeah, there's a lot of other good things going out there, but you picked IU. Like, so it isn't sort of like we're better, you know, we're the best, and so you should give to us. It's more like amongst the many people out there, we're glad that you saw us as worthy of giving. Any other impressions, Thomas?
It just says you a lot, so it's talking about the person. It makes that person watching it think about themselves and their role in the relationship with IU, rather than it just being promotion about, you know, just talking about IU.
Yeah, no, that's very good. Other impressions or things? Yeah.
The picture that stood out the most to me was the kind of like older gentleman with the graduation hat. And just like the look of excitement on his face really just stood out to me.
Yeah. So again, this was a thank you video. Like, you know, sometimes you get a thank you card and you're kind of like, whatever. But like, you know, I see this and I'm like, it makes you proud to be affiliated and associated with IU. Even if you didn't give, you're like, IU's pretty good. Like, it's good to be a part of this institution. Like, look at what this institution's doing. And so they use this, it's a thank you note, but they use it to frame and tell a much larger story about IU. And I guarantee it's going to generate more and more engagement, involvement, contributions, because people walk away saying, wow, I want to be a part of that. I want to be contributing to that. And so for your marketing campaigns, we're going to walk through some of the aspects of it. Generally, so you're going to be writing up a marketing campaign for your nonprofit. And to pull back, what is the purpose of marketing? Like some of the just basic purposes of marketing an organization? Yeah.
Reach a broader audience.
Okay, to reach a broader, when you say reach, what do you mean?
Like to convey your message of what your organization is trying to accomplish, so to like make them aware of what your organization is.
Okay, and then I would say, and then move them to action. So it's like you want to make them aware of your organization and then move them to some sort of act. So if it's, again, this goes back to the stakeholders, that if the action is to give, then you want to move them to give. If the action is to volunteer, move them to volunteer. If it's to participate as a recipient, to move them to get involved. So a key point of marketing is not only making them aware, but then there's some sort of action that you're wanting to trigger from that person. And so when you think about marketing, as we've talked about all these different things, and it's all sort of under the umbrella of marketing and communications, what have been some successful marketing campaigns that you can think of where you're like, wow, it's all over the place, I'm bleeding it, like it's a part of the fabric, yeah.
Like Nike,
okay,
great marketing campaigns, like especially with LeBron, and what he's done for Cleveland last year. Like that story in itself is great for like Nike, and they've been taking advantage of his story and using it for their brand.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean so Nike is known worldwide, and its associations with key people is significant. Yeah.
I think going off of Nike too, they gave a lot of free shoes to Olympic runners in the main events. And they had the bright colors in their shoes, so people saw their brand on a huge scale.
Sure, yeah. And so again, if you think about it in terms of marketing with like Nike, it's awareness of the product, of the brand, and then the action is buy shoes, buy the product. If you then think about in terms of nonprofits, so, it's easy to think about marketing in the private sector because they have tons of money to do marketing. So, and so I want to make the distinction between, so there's marketing, sort of the advertising, big advertising, whether it's at the Olympics of just flooding the Olympics with money and promotions or movie trailers, like those are multi-million-dollar advertising marketing campaigns. What I'm more interested in is what I'll call like social marketing campaigns, ones that are very low cost, but they go viral, and in a sense, they accomplish the same thing of bringing brand awareness, but then going more widespread. Yeah.
Was that like ALS?
Oh yeah, the bucket challenge. Yeah.
Which I know in terms of like viral.
And it costs them essentially nothing, Eric.
I was gonna say, I remember the Vote for Coney campaign. Until the guy kind of went wild and got naked. But that campaign was like huge. I remember everyone was like watching that video, and it was like all over.
Yeah.
We talked about it at school and everything.
So when you think about the marketing campaign for your organization, don't think multi-million-dollar ads, but think more in the terms of what are the social marketing things that you can do to expand awareness of your organization and trigger some sort of action or involvement. And what are some successful marketing campaigns, and not private sector for-profit marketing, but more the nonprofit sector marketing campaigns, things that are what I would call social marketing, in many ways have gone viral. Yeah.
The Louisville Orchestra and Symphony, like their director goes out in public and has public performances in order to draw people into concerts.
Okay. Innovation within that one. It expands people's exposure versus requiring them to come in. Yeah.
Starbucks just doubled down on their holiday cups. Last year the red ones had a big deal, and they released a set of green ones that were similar to keep their green marketing going.
So what was the big deal about the red ones? That they were red?
It used to be that they had a different appeal in general, and they appealed more to the Christian sector. And then what happened is that last year it was a red cup and it had a logo on the front, and it appealed more to just a holiday thing. And so they were putting Starbucks and taking Christ out of Christmas and stuff like this, and it went viral, and then it went viral for drawing on the cups. And this year they released a green one instead of a red one that has a same small image on it, and they put one or two things in it to make people have something to talk about. But I think it was estimated that they had $1.3 billion worth of free marketing.
Yeah.
Over what happened last year through just everybody talking about it.
Yeah.
They doubled down on it again this year, and you just can't beat it. Because now people want to go see the cup.
Yeah. So any others that come to mind that you think of as effective campaigns? Businesses have marketing departments and they have huge teams of marketers. You think of like the auto industry and the marketing that they do with cars is on a scale that's just unparalleled to what nonprofits can do. But nonprofits have an opportunity to be innovative, to tap into social trends and help generate ideas that would spread widely at low cost. And what are some of those that you can recall? Yeah.
This is like super strange, and this is another person's situation, but like I know people like when they get drinking tickets, they have to volunteer certain hours sometimes if they're getting it appealed, and there's like a list of like 5. It's like Goodwill, and like just think of how many kids here get drinking tickets, and then that list just gets like given to all these kids, and it's like Goodwill, I don't know, like the basic, like easy to volunteer. They probably get so many volunteers just because like they have this list of 5 places.
Sure. How does an organization get on that list, you know?
I don't know, I just remember like freshman year everybody like volunteered.
So you're familiar with this list pretty well?
No. I'm pretty good at it.
Eric.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Vote for County campaign was pretty inexpensive because it was just like a YouTube video. I think it had millions and millions of views.
Yeah. To me, I'm fascinated by these campaigns because regardless of the cause in many ways, it's more the social phenomena linked to how these things go viral or what things catch on. And we only see the ones that catch on. There's thousands of others that attempt it but just fall flat. And as you guys think about your marketing campaign and even the ones that you're aware of that are good, what are some of the characteristics of ones that are effective? Now, these are social marketing campaigns, not big commercials and billboards and all these things, but more economically feasible type of ones where you actually use social relationships to expand your market. What are some of the characteristics of the ones that do go viral?
They're really relevant and present in day-to-day trivial things, like social media or like word of mouth. They're just very present where you wouldn't expect.
So you come across them in everyday life.
Places you wouldn't be.
Yeah, and easily transferable. Brandon.
They make you want to care. They make you want to buy into what they're selling point, and make you feel that you're a part of it already, or that you can be a part of it by just doing what they're asking.
Sure, yeah. And so it's easy to, I care about this, I want to do something. There's like an easy step, yeah.
Kind of gives you a sense of belonging when they pitch the campaign, and you just kind of feel like, I need to be a part of this. Like, this is something that I need.
Yeah, and there's, I would say, a tangible way for you to demonstrate that you are a part of it. Like, I mean, I even think, I'm not sure how popular this is now, but like with Facebook, of changing your profile picture to symbolize or to acknowledge, like, hey, I'm a part of this movement, and I'm, you know, all these people are switching it for this period of time or something.
They're also usually very short and concise. It doesn't require much of your attention, maybe 30 seconds of your time. Like the bucket challenge, the videos were never longer than 20 seconds.
Yeah, very simple. If it gets complicated, even I know sometimes people will ask me to do something, I'll go and click on the website and I'll be like, you know, I just get stopped through the process because it's like, okay, this is too much. I just need a simple. Well, so these are the things that I want you to incorporate into your marketing plan. You know, something that's a compelling cause, like make sure that what you're promoting is compelling. The idea of a low barrier is that it doesn't take much to get involved, like sort of Brandon was saying, it's like, oh, I care about this, and then what can I do? But it has to be a low barrier of what you do. Simple, action-oriented, meaning a marketing campaign should require or involve action on the part of the recipient. You know, I see it, and it should give me steps to take action, whether it's to give, whether it's to volunteer, whether it's to wear a t-shirt, whether it's to put on a bracelet, something in there. Built-in growth potential. So a lot of campaigns are really good, but there's not a model for how do you expand this. So like the ALS one is actually really good because it's unlimited how much it can grow. It doesn't require the infrastructure, it's just all self-done, and so the more people that get involved, it can just grow exponentially. And then celebrity participation, really with like ALS, the reason why it took off was because of Zuckerberg and a few other key celebrities did it. So if you watch the trends of the number of videos posted, there are key points, and they're typically celebrities that caused this huge spike in more and more people doing the ALS challenge. So when you put together your marketing campaign, the 3 things you need to focus on is identifying your audience. When you do a campaign, you have multiple stakeholders and you're going to be writing about your stakeholders. I want you to pick one of your stakeholders to be the target of your campaign. And then identify the purpose of your campaign. So it isn't just, oh, we want to advertise our organization, but it has to be like, hey, we're launching volunteer month or something. You want to have a purpose or a focus of your campaign versus just generic, like, look at us, we're a great organization. And then identify your hook or your medium. And this is that action-oriented thing, like buy a t-shirt or post this on social media or whatever sort of the hook is that's going to translate into action of your target audience. And then if it goes viral, if you have an idea for how to make it go viral, that's great, but most people don't know how to do that. Even the ones that do go viral, they don't know why it did, but they're glad that it did. So that's the marketing campaign stuff.